Hey, fellow investors, I found this video of Money Track TV, and it was an interesting story, and I just want to share it with you. General Insurance Company of America.
Talking about a company. Their relationship began innocently enough, but blossomed over time and turned Lindell into the largest single shareholder at Safeco Insurance.
See your local professional Safeco agent.
In 1907, Lindell was born on a farm in Sherman, Texas, one of 6 kids. They were all raised to be independent, so much so that Lindell got herself kicked out of college for having a bad attitude.
So I was a loose woman. I wore my dresses too short.
She ended up graduating in 1932 with a degree in economics, marrying her officer and a gentleman's sweetheart, Rusty, 3 years later.
I've had the most wonderful life. I could live it over except World War II.
Stocks were the furthest thing from her mind as the war ended. But Lindell, 43 years old, was about to be set up on a blind date with destiny.
See? General takes care of everything.
The General Insurance Company of America got its start in Seattle in 1923 as a fire insurance company. In the 1950s, the General created a subsidiary, the Selective Auto and Fire Insurance Company of America, or Safeco. Lindell and Ellen, their 7-year-old daughter, were living in Seattle, missing Rusty, when she decided the time had come to invest. She went to dinner with an old friend, an insurance agent, and posed a question to him.
I said, I have a little money. I'd like to invest in stock market. And I said, do you know anything about it? And he said, no, I don't have any money.
But a week later, he called with an idea. He said there were 30 shares of Safeco stock for sale. His boss was borrowing money to buy half of them. The other 15 were up for grabs.
I hung up, got to thinking if it'd be good for him, why wouldn't it be good for me?
She bought the shares for $315.
They sent me the share, the certificate then, and I had no bank box or anything, so I just found a nice shoebox and put it up on the shelf.
Over the next 58 years, her constant companion, Safeco, would split a whopping 11 times and turn this country gal into a multi-millionaire.
Now, when they're talking about stock splits, basically, let's say you have one share of this company. Let's say it's let's say it's a $10 stock, and for whatever reason, let's say it goes to they split your one share at $10 into 10 shares at $1. So it's still apples to apples. Usually what happens is, let's say a stock is trading at $1 and it goes below $1. Well, in order to stay on the NASDAQ, or stay on the U.S. stock market, basically it has to trade over $1 for like so many months. So basically what they do is what's called like a reverse split, and that's basically, let's say you got 10 shares at $1 of this stock, and then now all of a sudden you got one share at $10. It still doesn't change anything. You still have the same. It's still apples to apples. It's just, but anyway, basically what happened, I guess, in her case, is the stock appreciated and it went through 11 splits over its lifetime. And I think she ended up, her 15 shares ended up turning into something like 33,000 shares. And of course, most insurance companies pay dividends. So she did a smart thing, and she just bought and held and reinvested her dividends, and she was one of the lucky ones.
Well, I've considered it my savings, and I had faith in the company, and I just stood by them. Brokers told me over and over, you have too much in that. I said, I don't care. Maybe I have, but I'm not selling.
That was the biggest mistake I probably ever made with Ms. Russell, and that was suggesting that she sell some of her Safeco to diversify the portfolio.
What made you hold on to it?
Well, we had to go to...
And again, like this modern finance theory tells you you have to have 10% in manufacturing, you got to have 10% energy, you got to have 10% in banks, you got to have that's a bunch of bullshit. Like I said, Warren Buffett said, if you pick 5 good companies, that's all the diversity you need. And if you own, say, Berkshire Hathaway, the only bad thing is they don't pay dividends, but they pay dividends internally. So the companies that pay dividends, let's say a company earns $2 a year, and then out of that $2, they pay 50 cents out in dividends. And let's say they pay 50 cents to pay down the debt and maybe $1 to reinvest in the company. So that's fine because you're still reinvesting in the business. Well, Warren Buffett doesn't pay dividends, and the reason why is because he knows he can turn instead of paying out that $1 in dividends, he can turn that $1 into $3 or $1.50 or $4, $5. So for him, it makes little sense to pay out money in dividends because he can turn that $1 into more than $1. But a lot of companies that maybe they're mature companies, maybe they can't grow anymore, and really to just keep the shareholders happy, they have to keep increasing their dividends every year. But eventually, companies get old, companies die, just like people do. And when you see a company that's paying out 80%, well, like I said, real estate investment trusts are different, and also utilities are different because by law, utilities are basically monopolies. They're local monopolies, is what they are. So if you own a utility company, by law, they have to pay most of their profits out to the shareholders in dividends. And the same thing with REITs. With REITs, 90% of their income is paid out in dividends, but you have to be the ones paying the taxes on that. So that's the trade-off. But I'm not bashing dividends by any means. Dividends are great, and the compounding effect. I mean, this lady's 100 and some years old, or was. I don't know when she died. But so those dividends were compounding for I don't know, 60 years. And, those 12, I mean, something so small, but I mean, back then in 1929, $300 was a lot of money back then. You could go buy a hamburger for a penny or 2 pennies, maybe 5 pennies. But, those 15 shares ended up turning into 33,000 shares, and that $300 turned into well over $1 million. It doesn't say how much her net worth is, or how much because the company was sold, so we can't look it up and see. All right, well, she owns 33,000 shares, and the stock price is $100. She's got $3 million or something. We just don't know unless you find the news article.
And I was interested in investing and making money. To me, money is a tool. You invest and you leave it.
In 1957, Rusty was temporarily transferred to Fort Worth, and they bought a house, the same house Lyndall still lives in. But Rusty was done with moving around.
He came home and he said, "We've retired."
They lived off savings, Rusty's retirement, Social Security, and never touched the Safeco dividend. Lyndall credits the Depression with teaching her generation to save for old age. It made her fiscally conservative. Some might even say tight. Are you offended by that?
No, I am generous with people, but I am not wasteful or extravagant.
Lyndall passed the $1 million mark in paper value well over a decade ago. So how many shares did she end up with?
33,346 shares.
Not too shabby for a $315 investment she kept in a shoebox. But by the spring of 2008, Lyndall's luck and love had run out. Her beloved Rusty had been gone for 20 years. And now her adored Safeco was leaving her too.
It was an emotional thing for her.
Safeco
So this company was bought out for 6.2, and it looks like a B. I guess it's a B, $1 billion.
was sold to Liberty Mutual Group for $6.2 billion, providing a gracious parting gift to its most ardent supporter.
And Uncle Sam nearly killed me because I hadn't paid anything back in the growth in the 58 years.
As she approaches 100,
So that stock was compounding for 58 years. That's a long time. I mean, most people, don't live to be 100. Most people die, I don't know, in their 70s or 80s. But a small percentage of us will live to be over 100. And now, if that stock was in, say, a Roth IRA, you pay the taxes up front. So when you look at your account statement and it says, $2 or $3 million, you really have $2 or $3 million. I'm sure she had to pay probably at least $250,000, if not $500,000, in taxes to the government. But like I said, in a previous video, I've mentioned something called the 4% rule, and what a lot of people are taught is because at some point you have to take deductions. You have to take money out, and you're forced to, basically, by the government. But let's say your investment is growing at 10%, and you take out 4% every year. In theory, you will never run out of money because it's growing at 10%. You're only taking 4% out. But when a company sells, a company is bought out, well, that maybe that company that buys them goes private, and when they buy the company, they're usually paying a premium, and they're purchasing your shares as well. But yeah, this is just an incredible story of just an average, everyday person. I mean, she was an economist, so she was a very smart lady, and she didn't panic when the war happened and pull her investment out, or she never touched her dividends. She always reinvested her dividends. And those shares over the course of 60 years just kept buying more and more shares. And, most insurance companies usually get 8% return on their money. And Warren Buffett loves insurance companies. That was the whole reason he had bought Geico, and I think he had bought some other smaller ones over the years. But basically, what insurance companies have is something that's called float. So, let's say, I got your car insurance or something. Well, every month, you got to pay $100 or $200 or $300 or whatever it is, and you're getting no benefit really for that. The only way that you ever recoup any of those expenses is if you get in a car wreck and it wasn't your fault, and they end up paying your hospital bills, and maybe they buy you a new car. But you really don't win, because even if it's not your fault, your insurance will still go up. If you get in a car wreck, your insurance will still go up. So what Warren Buffett does, he's got very rich off of dividends. All the companies that he buys most of them pay dividends. The banks pay dividends. Coca-Cola pays dividends. Almost all the companies he owns, pay some sort of dividend. But let's say you're paying that $100 every month to the insurance company, and they can use that money today to invest. They can they can use that money to what Warren Buffett does is a lot of times he'll just buy short-term treasury bills, which they don't yield very much. They might yield 1% or 0.5% or 1.5% or whatever, but they yield something, and you're getting some return on that float, and you're doing a quote safe investment, and you're getting some kind of return on that money. Because with insurance companies, I mean, you may not get paid back until years later. So you're paying. It's almost like when you go to you move somewhere and you got to pay a cable bill, and they want you to pay a month in advance, or pay for 2 months, or get an apartment or whatever, and they want a deposit and first month rent and last month rent and all this stuff, and they can use that. I'm not saying these. I'm saying an insurance company can use that money and invest and get some kind of return, and the banks do the same exact thing. Whereas if you put your money in a bank, they only have to keep 10% in the building, and the other 90% they can loan out, and people come in and ask for loans, and they get 10% maybe, or 7%, 8% on these loans, sometimes 20% if they're credit cards or higher. And so what this is called float, and that's what insurance companies do. And so insurance companies have been a very good investment for a lot of people. Now, if you had to ask my opinion on insurance companies today, I would say that I do not think they are going to be a good investment going forward. And I don't know, I'm not a saint, I'm not a Bible scholar, but I do think in the coming years there's going to be more earthquakes. There's going to be more floods. It's going to be volcanoes. There's going to be tsunamis. It's going to be wars, maybe even a world war. And guess who has to pay when natural disasters hit? Insurance companies do. So I will caution anybody from investing in too much or all in any kind of insurance company right now, because I believe in the coming years that maybe all these environmental kooks are right, and maybe all the ice caps are going to melt, and half of the East Coast goes underwater and it doesn't exist anymore. And I don't, I think this global warming thing is a bunch of BS. I think it's just a way to redistribute wealth from the U.S. to the underdeveloped countries, and the other countries, they're using coal and stuff like that, but we can't use coal because this pollutes the environment. But it's okay if everyone else does it. But even if the world spent $40 trillion on global warming, it will change the degree 0.001%. It's not even going to make a difference. So we can try to cut back on fossil fuels and that kind of thing. I'm all for the environment, but I'm sorry to get off on a tangent. But basically, I was talking about insurance companies, and they have what's called float. So you pay a fee up front, and the company never has to pay any of that money back to the customer until sometimes years down the road. So if I'm getting, say, $100 a month from Sally, that's $1,200 a year. I can turn that $1,200 maybe into $5,000, and in a 2 or 3 year time frame. But anyway, let's continue with the story.
102. It's clear Lyndall's most enduring love affair is with life itself, and she has some sage advice for the rest of us.
Most of us forget the most beautiful things of our lives each day. We should stop and pause just a few minutes and say thanks for the sunshine.
And thank you, Lyndall, for your sunshine. I love everything about this woman.
What's not to love? She gets kicked out of college for having seriously
and what are the
She did not panic when the market.
what do the financial experts say? Well, this is what she did right. But they beat her up for not diversifying.
Stock when it's high, but continuing to reinvest in the investing automatically buys those more shares when the price is down, and that proves to be a wonderful builder of wealth in the long.
But they beat her up for not diversifying. But like I said, most of the truly rich people in this country, they do not diversify; they concentrate. But like I said, if you do want to diversify, it's up to you how you want to do it. There's many different ways. Me, when I'm doing the smaller caps, a lot of those companies are not proven yet. I remember, I believe it was Warren Buffett said, if you can't invest at least 4% into 4 or 5% into a company, like you have no business investing in it at all. Why are you going to stick more money into your 20th best idea instead of more money into your best idea? Very few people, he said, have ever got rich off of their 20th best idea. But a lot of people have got rich off their best idea. But, if you're... there's 20 nickels in a dollar. If you want to pick 20 good companies and put 5% in each, I would say that you're well diversified. But I don't think you need 20 companies because you definitely can't follow 20 companies. 20 companies is hard to follow. You can't keep track of the day-to-day in reading 20 annual reports. You can unless you want to spend, 100 hours, 60 hours a week, reading the latest on your companies and reading every news article that comes out and reading every newspaper article and reading every 401k and every quarterly report. And for a good company, you just need to check on it every couple of years. You don't need to, if you plant a flower in your backyard, you don't go and look, today at 12 and see, I think it grew like a half of a centimeter or half of a millimeter, and then you go back at 1 o'clock and look at it again. You don't need to look and watch a flower grow every 2 or 3 seconds of the day. You just you plant the seed, you water it, you come and check on it periodically, and if the ground's good and get some sun and get some water, it's gonna, and there's no weeds around it, it's gonna grow. So the good companies, you don't have to micromanage. Now, me with these little small caps, sometimes that I invest in, the day-to-day can change dramatically. There could be a news article and the stock falls 50%, or a news article and the stock goes up 50% overnight in a couple hours in a day. So the smaller caps you have to watch a little more carefully, because a lot of times they have what's called, now I'm going to mention another word called float, but it's not the float I was talking about earlier. Basically, if a stock has low float, that means if it could take drastic moves. All right, let's say Coca-Cola has like 1 trillion shares or something. So in order to move the market with Coca-Cola, I mean, you would need a tremendous amount of money to move the market. And even with a tremendous amount of money, you could maybe only move it 1 or 2 percentage points, maybe not even that much. But with a smaller cap company, with and I'm no expert in float, but I just know that when there's a higher float, somebody can move the market is easier to manipulate, is what I'm saying. But the point of this video was to show you how, a woman that had spent $315 bought 15 shares of this company back in 1929 or something, and reinvested those dividends, never put another penny in, never bought any more shares, but just reinvested the dividends, and those 15 shares turned into 33,000 shares over the next 60 years. And I don't know how much profit each share paid out in dividends every year, but I'm sure it was probably a couple dollars at least, if maybe more. Maybe at the end there, maybe she was getting $20 or $30 a share for every share she owned. I don't know. But she definitely turned $300 basically into well over $1 million. But like I said, if you're talking about big cap companies like Coca-Cola, we're going to be here for another 100 years. You don't need 20 Coca-Colas. There's not 20 Coca-Colas in the world. There's not 20 great businesses like that in the universe. But so if you buy 4 companies, 5 companies, 5 good businesses, that's all you need. Or something like Berkshire Hathaway. But like the trouble I have with Berkshire is it doesn't pay a dividend. But I know the reason they don't pay a dividend, but they actually do, but it's internal. And the dividends that they get, they basically use those dividends to purchase shares in other businesses. And most of the businesses they buy pay dividends. Like when the financial crash happened, Berkshire Hathaway loaned Bank of America. This is bad when you get an individual investor loaning a bank money. You're in trouble when you're asking for that. And Bank of America basically sold Warren Buffett a lot of premium stock. What a premium share is let's say the company goes bankrupt. the premium shareholder would get paid first before the normal shareholder. But the deal that Buffett made with Bank of America was he was getting 10% dividends off of his shares. And not only that, Bank of America was doing share buybacks. So not only was he getting a 10% dividend, plus they were doing share buybacks. They were buying back, 10% of the stock every year. So if somebody buys back 10% of their stock every year, your ownership in the company basically goes up 10% without you having to spend another penny. And Apple used to do the same thing. They used to do share buybacks. So a company, if they believe they're undervalued, it makes sense to use some of their extra cash to buy back some of their own shares and decrease the number of shares outstanding. Let's say there's 1 million shares out there in the universe for Apple. I'm just using an example. There's a lot more than that, but I'm just saying, let's say there's 1 million. And then they bought 20% of their shares up, so now there's only 800,000 shares. And then the next year they buy 100,000, now there's 700,000. So in just a couple years, your ownership in the company went up 20 or 30% without you ever investing or spending another penny, just because the company bought back their own shares. Now the government has taxed companies from doing share buybacks because they're a bunch of idiots, and they have taxed them now for doing share buybacks. But the other way they can reward shareholders is by dividends. And the third way they can reward shareholders is if the stock goes up over time. I mean, if you're a dividend investor, you really don't care if the stock goes up, really. I mean, if it's a good company, you really want the stock to go down, because if the stock goes down, then you get to buy more and more shares at a lower price. So you get more shares and you get more bang for your buck. Your dollars are working harder for you. Your money is earning interest, and that interest is earning money for you, and it just starts a compounding effect that eventually it gets to be exponential. But anyway, thank you for listening.